Welcome back, everybody, to another Cedar Flags, a very exciting episode because, as you can tell, we're finally building another roller coaster. I don't think I was actually planning on putting this particular roller coaster in the game or in the park just yet. I was thinking we were going to use the space more toward the Ferris wheel, in between that and the Cedar Speedway area in that juncture. But no, I was looking at this area and I figured, why not go ahead and build our Hypercoaster? So yes, this is an Aero-inspired Hypercoaster. I'm sure some of you guys are pretty big roller coaster buffs out in the audience, and you'll probably correct me in everything I say wrong, but I will say it's inspired by Aero. It's not supposed to be just like a straight-up Aero roller coaster, and the first drop is, I think, probably the weirdest part of this coaster in terms of like trying to stick to an Aero design. The curve is very sudden, and then it goes into a long drop. So that might not be true to like an authentic coaster, but I think the rest of it's fairly authentic. So as we go through, you're going to see the iterations of this coaster. It really didn't take that long to do. I don't think there were a couple things like this curve we're working on right now. The turnaround, it was kind of weird. It took like 2 or 3 different versions to finally come together into something that looked kind of nice. So this coaster is a pretty simple coaster. It's pretty much an out and back, and it's pretty cool. I guess I would think probably late 80s to early 90s era type Aero coaster. And yeah, it's very heavily inspired by Magnum XL at Cedar Point, as you can kind of probably tell by the layout. It's a little bit different. Obviously, the hill on the actual ride doesn't turn. It's pretty much up and straight down. But we had to kind of fit the parameters of the park. And it's actually kind of funny because as soon as I did a stream after I built this ride all off camera, or off stream, rather. I mean, obviously I was recording it, but I built this all kind of on my own time, and then I booted up and did a live stream over on Twitch, and someone said, look at the park. Like, the park took how long to get like what we had, and then we essentially are like doubling the size of it with one single roller coaster, which I guess is a fair point. I don't know if it's a criticism, but it is, I guess, I don't know. It's pretty cool. This was always meant to be like an area, like where we just built all of this coaster is always meant to be like a back lot kind of thing, just taking up space. I didn't really want to build it out with like path work and all this stuff, but it was such a good spot for a coaster, and this coaster in particular is really great for this. So it's a fairly large coaster. I think it's like 250 feet is the highest drop point. It goes, I think, 85 miles an hour. So I believe that puts it in the Hypercoaster realm, and it's honestly, when it's all said and done, it is the best rated coaster we have in the park. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. And like I said, it really didn't take that long. I mean, there were a couple tricky spots, like this ending spot here was a little tricky, but in the end here, I love how this comes out. I mean, there's a couple airtime hills, and then it goes into this kind of big winding helix almost into the final brake run. And we're actually going to watch right now in real time. We're going to watch the train as it goes down. This was more or less like my first attempt at a complete track, and I was just kind of watching how this train ran through the track, and there were a couple things here and there that we had to tweak, but for the most part, it's a fairly nice design, I think, and it's a little rough in spots, and that's actually by design. There's a couple hills where, like this hill right center screen right now, it goes up and then it kind of flattens out, and then it goes down again. So it's not a big, smooth, overarching hill, and that was kind of the influence of the Aero coasters. Some of those coasters, it's kind of hard to explain, but they're very kind of rigid in the way they transition from part to part, and we're just checking to make sure we go under this train track and people's hands aren't going to get hit by the train. But yeah, there are a couple like more, I think linear is probably a good word to describe it, a couple linear parts here and there in the layout, and it really ends up being pretty good, I think, in the end. It's fairly true to, I think it's fairly true to the aerodynamics coaster layouts. I'm sure you guys, if you're big coaster enthusiasts, will let me know how well I did in the comments. Please, be gentle, I guess. I'm pretty sure I've probably screwed up something here or there, and I know the coaster enthusiast crowd can get very, very picky in terms of, like, details. So that I just want to keep it as, like, this is inspired. This isn't, like, an actual recreation of a ride. But I think we nailed it. Also, I think this is probably a good time for you guys to suggest some names for this coaster in the comments, and that will kind of dictate the theming. I really don't have like a theme in mind for this, and I don't know if we want to keep the red color of it. You guys can let me know all of that kind of stuff in the comments below. The red is kind of like iconic to me when I think of like an aero coaster. It's maybe not, maybe it's more of like a primary colors situation for those aero coasters, but it really, I don't know. We may change it, we may not. It really depends on the name. I really want to do something with the station itself based on the name. So I don't want to go like super thematic with it, if that's a word. I don't want to be like super themed or anything, but like something has to be like inspired by it. So I'm looking for your comments for that. And I don't know. I think, I don't know. It's going to be kind of dependent on that, and I don't think I've really done too much in terms of like building ahead for this coaster, so it's still kind of up in the air. I'll be looking for you guys in the comments here, and then I'll probably run with that, and we'll see what happens when we go into building that, and that's going to be in the next episode. So this episode is only the track work, so this is, I don't know, it's going to be a little inconclusive. Like, I know a lot of people are gonna want to see the POV of the ride, but it's just not ready yet. Like, I want to save the POV for its own video, or potentially, when we finally get all of the scenery stuff done. But you guys know I love to make, its own video when it's all said and done. But if you actually stop by a live stream, we've been on the POV a few times, so that's another hint to catch out a live stream if you can at some point. But what we're doing right here with these weird tile path work over here, this is going to be a backstage area, and I think I had a couple comments so far like, you aren't doing anything with the backstage work. So what we're doing over there is putting a parking lot down, and we're going to be making like a maintenance building. It's going to be kind of interesting. It's in kind of a weird hidden spot, and it's going to work pretty well because I feel like we're going to be able to hide it fairly well from the queue, which is going to be basically in between these tracks and the lift hill here. That's all going to be queue for this ride. I'm curious to see how many people are going to really ride this ride, and I feel like it's going to be a lot just because of the ratings that we get. It's, I think, up over 7 on excitement, and then the rest of them are all in the green and they're good. So I am super excited to see how the people are going to enjoy this ride, but that'll come in due time. We still have a lot of building left to do, and I guess the scenery work that we're going to be doing in the next episode is going to be basically, I want to do something with like a tunnel on the track. I also have a pretty cool thing that I did with like an on-ride photo section, and then of course we have to build our station building, but we're also going to be doing a little bit of nature work in the around the rest of the track back here in this weird spot across the lake. That is going to be not too meticulous. I'm pretty much just going to be putting a lot of trees down, and we're not going to get too crazy detailed with that kind of stuff because this is just, like I said, basically the only people who are ever going to come back here and see that are the people on this ride. So, and you're flying by it at like speed, so it's going to be not that important to yeah, there you go. You can see the ratings there, but it's not that important to go like super crazy with the theming back here, so that shouldn't be too bad. But you saw me go back and redo that turnaround section, got it to a place where it's fairly decent, and I think that was probably the final form of it. Of course, in the live portion, we'll go back and we'll kind of look at the final layout just from an overview section. We'll take it through, but we're not going to do that POV just yet. But yeah, this is pretty much it in terms of layout. There's a little bit more. I say that as I delete this. I was trying to like just tweak the ride a little bit here and there just to get those ratings as high as they possibly could be. But there's a lot of smoothing work that I think I edited out probably, but there is just really, when you're building a coaster in this game, it's just minute, like, changes here or there. Like, how can I make this curve be a little bit better than it is? How can I make the excitement just a little bit better than it is? And that's actually what we did here. We deleted this curve, and at the end of this turn here, we actually tightened it up a little bit. So as you go into the turn, it's a nice sweeping turn, and as you're losing speed, you're actually pulling a faster turn. So I think the G-forces are probably kept up that way, and that's probably a good technique to use in the future there, but we'll probably do that more as we build another coaster. But like I said, this coaster came together fairly well, fairly quickly, and it came together in such a way that, like, the ratings are awesome. And honestly, I just love this area. Like, there's certain little elements of this ride that I really love, and one of those is going under this train track. It's such a nice little, like, area down here, and it's a good way to get back. Obviously, we had to cross back over the lift hill, or, like, that section of the track, so going down under the terrain, under the train track, it's such an awesome little feeling. And it's like a head chop, too, so the riders, as they're coming through here, they're gonna be like, oh no, the train, and it's just barely gonna whiz by them, you know, so it's really cool. I had a little bit of trouble with the little, like, coming out of that one last turn. I guess I'll point this out in the live portion too, but there's like a little bit of tweaking that we do back here with like some airtime hills, but it all comes together in the end. I don't know, it was a little bit of challenge back there, but I think we finally get it to a point where it's pretty good. Obviously, I mean, the ratings speak for themselves, but this coaster is huge. I'm not gonna lie, like, looking at it, it is massive. It is a very long coaster. I was tweaking the time settings for the coaster, but I don't know if those affect it in the test mode. And so what I'm saying is, like, the timing, so the departure intervals for the ride. So it's a block sectioned ride, obviously. We have 2 trains running on it, but if one train isn't done, it'll lift the second train up to the top of the hill and just stop it there. I have it all timed out to where that shouldn't be happening. There's like a minimum departure window that you can adjust, and I did that. So I'm hoping when we finally get riders on here, they're not going to be at the top of the hill just like stopped. It should be pretty good, but again, we're going to have to tweak that as we get into like opening this ride. So it's one of those things we'll watch, but we're just finishing up this final little tweak. This is that weird airtime hill section out of that turn that I was talking about. Very awkward. I think I end up smoothing it at some point again, and we get it to a final iteration, if you will. But yeah, it's just basically doing a little bit of smooth work from here on out, and I guess that's pretty much it. Obviously, we had a little bit of terrain work to do. There are scars in the terrain from where different, like, versions of the track were, so we go back in, and of course we are actually expanding the lake just a little bit more. I didn't really want it to be completely solid land back here, but it adds for another depth of just nature work. So that is pretty much it for this time lapse. I will kick it over to the live portion and we'll check out this new ride. Alright guys, we are live back in Cedar Flags, and we are looking at the new skyline, because back there you can see that mammoth we have of a brand new coaster. And yes, this is pretty much what it looks like from back in the front of the park. It's a nice addition. It's pretty big, but you don't really get the sheer size of it until you walk over and start to be able to see the entirety of the track. But yes, it is a very large coaster. So yeah, it's a fairly simple design, like I was saying. It's out and back, but it is like essentially doubling the size of our park. Like, if I put this over here, it's probably the same size as what we've already done in the park. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do to get this area ready for guests to come back and do their thing, but yeah, it's definitely eating up some space here. So the one thing that I don't think I talked too much about is the rerouting of the train again around this area. So before, the train came basically right through here, but I tried it with the train coming through here still. It was just a little awkward because it was going under the new roller coaster, but it just felt kind of weird. So I've rerouted the train once again. I feel like we're gonna end up putting some sort of like man-made wall around this in terms of like connecting it to the lake. So it's gonna look like there's just like a whole barrier system, or I don't know if key wall is the right, no, maybe key wall is the right word for that, but that's gonna be at some point. We're gonna have to do that. This was the maintenance area. Like I said, it's fairly nice to have something right here. I've checked that we have a couple trucks in the scenery pieces. The trucks fit under the coaster here. This is a good height for it. So this is all semi-realistic, or I guess it's fairly realistic if you're thinking in terms of realism, but there's going to be a building here. It's going to be kind of hidden because we're going to put some tree work down here too. So really you're going to notice it if you're on the ride, but if you're in the queue, which is going to be throughout here, or if you're on the path here, we're going to do a pretty good job of hiding that with some foliage. So that's going to be a fun build. I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, this is the new coaster. I need you guys to help me name this in the comments. But this is, actually, let's go ahead and check out the stats right here. We'll go to our testing here. Obviously, this test rating is amazing. We have a 7.5, essentially, for the excitement, which is way higher than anything we have in the park. Our fear is a 4.55, which I guess is good, and nausea is really low too. So this is a very well designed coaster. The one thing that I really struggled with was this first drop. It's kind of strange because it drops and turns right away and then goes into a straight drop. So I don't think this is very true to like authentic Aero coaster design. I've noticed that some of the Aero Hypercoasters had a large sweeping turn on their first drop, but this one is a very tight turn, so that's a little weird. We kind of ran up to the limit of the park just because our park limit is right here, so the boundary is kind of the limiting factor on this. But for the most part, this is a fairly authentic design. I think when you see the POV, which will come out after we've themed everything here, it's fairly linear in spots. Like, this is probably a decent example. The one thing I noticed with Aero Hypercoasters was there'd be like transition sections, and then it would just straighten out and go straight down until you hit the bottom where there'd be another transition section. So it's not like bumpy and rough, but it's not like super smooth. Like, one section doesn't really transition super smooth into the next section. And that, I think, is just a byproduct of the way they had to make coasters when they were building these kind of coasters. So there was like just getting introduced like computer design or computer aided design, but these were basically laid out on paper. So that's why some of these transitions were kind of put out the way they are on this ride. This one in particular is kind of, I think, fairly authentic Aero. You have a hill that kind of flat tops and then comes back down. This is actually a pretty decent spot, and we're going to end up doing like an on-ride photo section here, which is going to be kind of cool. Obviously, it's not going to take photos because that's not in the game, unfortunately, but we're going to have a faux online photo section, and we're going to actually end up building like an online on-ride. I keep saying online, wow. On-ride photo section. We're going to have a little kiosk for photos taken on the ride too. So this station's going to be fairly fun to build. I also want to do like a transfer track at the back brake run here. So if you don't know what that is, it's another whole track that basically slides in, and they can take the trains on and off the ride that way. So that'll be kind of fun. I've never done that in this game, but it's definitely a more authentic coaster layout when you have that kind of stuff. I guess we didn't even see the final results here. Our duration, we have basically, what is it, 2.5 minutes on the ride. A lot of it's taken up by the lift hill, but the track length is a stunning 6,200 feet, max speed at 85 miles an hour. Our average speed is fairly low because of that long lift hill, which is a whopping 250 feet high. But yeah, this is a pretty awesome coaster. It's got 11 airtime hills, and it's pretty awesome. It'll get better with scenery, obviously, too. So yeah, I guess that's gonna be pretty much it. I really love this layout. I hope you guys like it too. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we will get into the nitty-gritty of building everything after you guys come up with a name in the comments. That'll help me a lot when we go through and do the station build. But yeah, guys, if you liked this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you're excited for it, thumbs up. If you didn't like it for whatever reason, go ahead and thumbs down. It doesn't matter to me. And I will catch you guys next time when we're back here building all the scenery for our brand new coaster.